If it's this early in June, let's see now, it was the 3rd of June. It was a midsummer's day. I'm about to recite Neil Diamond. Never mind. I could also go off into Bobby Gentry, but that's another matter on another June 3rd. We're actually looking a little later in the week, of course, to Saturday. And the final race of the 2025 Triple Crown Series. And it's fairly anticipated, isn't it? Because it's the rematch of the Kentucky Derby winner Sovereignty and the Preakness winner Journalism. They're the top two choices, but in what order may they fall when it comes to the odds? And how will our hardcore handicappers look at them and maybe others in the field of 8 for the mile and a quarter? What used to be the test of the champion, maybe we'll call it the pop quiz of the champion, while it's a little shorter, and it's Saratoga. Ron Flatter here on the Ron Flatter Racing Pod, this pop-up edition that we do for all the Triple Crown races and the Breeders' Cup, including our usual cast of characters. They are the hardcore handicappers. Let's get a quick snapshot of how they've done this Triple Crown season and what they're looking forward to with the Belmont Stakes. First, the boss at Horse Racing Nation, and he's got his fingers on the pulse of a lot of handicapping tools we'll be talking about as this podcast rolls on. He is Mark Midland. Mark?
Hey, Ron. Yeah, glad we could get together for the third time here. It's been a good Triple Crown for me. If there was only one race every weekend, I think I'd be in much better shape. But I did get out with the Derby Superfecta, and I think on the pod last time gave out the exacta with Gosker, and so $25 exacta. I think that came out pretty good. So I'm hoping for one more time.
Might have been a little better if the CAW wagerers hadn't pounded in on it late, but be that as it may, it's better.
You noticed that too?
Just a scotch, because I was also on that very same exacta, Mark. In fact, I gave it a little bit of it here and a lot of it on the Tony Kornheiser podcast. Yeah, nothing like not paying attention to the people who are buttering my bread, right? Let's also check in with the man who is Mr. Fair Odds. We'll find out what he looks at in terms of the Belmont Stakes, not only in terms of fair odds, but fair picks. Ed DeRosa.
It's been my best Triple Crown season ever, so I'm hoping to avoid the meatloaf because 2 out of 3 would be bad. I want to go. I want to go undefeated. So hopefully, can put it together for the Belmont Stakes. I do think this is the most challenging of the 3, and of course, we have the gift of hindsight with the other 2. The Derby's tough for a lot of reasons, but you're always going to get a price on a horse you like. You're going to find something in the Derby. I'm finding that a little more challenging in the Belmont Stakes, and in the Preakness. I thought Journalism was a layup. Neither is in play this weekend, so I'm very eager to hear what the panel has to say about this race. From a sporting perspective, though, this is the race of the year. This is what you want.
All right, so let's see if we can get picks of the year, too, from the likes of the man who runs the show at DraftKings Sportsbook, and also, of course, DK Horse, which sponsors the Acorn Stakes, which will be run Friday at Saratoga. He is Johnny Avello. Johnny?
Hi, Ronnie. Good to see you guys. Yeah, it was been good for me too. Straight bets good, exact is good. No complaints in the first 2. Um, it's we are using a horse that's the favorite in 2 of those races, but he's really really good, and we've got our prices improved by using him with other horses for good payoff. Sovereignty was a monster payoff in the Derby, and then Gosker it was an okay exact. It wasn't as good as I would have liked it, but overall, no complaints for me for this Triple Crown so far.
So far, yeah. No, I had the tale of 2 halves each of the days. I was great on the undercard and horrible on the Derby, and then I was horrible on the undercard and great on the Preakness. So we'll see what happens. Crossing my fingers that the greatness continues for at least a part of the card for the Belmont Stakes. Okay, so that card will be, as we mentioned, Saturday at Belmont Park. We'll get into every horse in the race, 1 through 8. But before we do that, I want to make sure that I did tease you a little bit with the tools that we have available at picks.horseраcingnation.com. Ed, why don't you tell us what you're looking at in terms of what we want to plug?
Well, I know he's been on your pod before. He's not one of the hardcore handicappers, but Mike Shuddy is, I think, right there with all of us. He's had a great Triple Crown season too, which I guess makes a lot of sense. I know we have some overlap in the materials we use, including Super Screener, of course. And he didn't let off the gas in the Preakness. He was among those that identified Gosger as well. Unfortunately, we all kind of took a little bit of a haircut thanks to the CRW play in the final minutes, but he's been on it. He's identified the logical contenders, which of course in the Preakness was pretty obvious with journalism, not so much in the Derby, but he had that right. And he's identified the long shots as well. I have actually not had a peek yet of what he thinks of the Belmont. I wanted to go into this panel agnostic of some of the thoughts of handicappers I really trust, him being chief among them. But I'm hoping he has a clean sweep as well. It'd be nice if the HRN crew, all four of us can, and five with Johnny, can do well. And Super Screener certainly has lived up to the hype thus far.
Yeah, and in fact, Mike was on the podcast this past Friday to give us his view from 30,000 feet. His specifics, though, are available to you right now when you go to picks.horseracingnation.com. Look for the Super Screener for the Belmont Stakes in the upper left. Click that, and not only can you find a package that will get you through just this coming weekend, but go to the bottom of the page for something a little longer term. Maybe you've already ridden that success so far with Mike Shuddy. So why not go ahead and parlay that, if you will? You can find the plan that fits you. Go to Picks, P-I-C-K-S, picks.horseracingnation.com, and get yourself plugged in to the Super Screener. This is the Hardcore Handicappers podcast for the Belmont Stakes from Horse Racing Nation, the Ron Flatter Racing Pod. I am Racing Pod, and if you're listening to this episode the usual way, after Tuesday, a video version is posted on YouTube. If you're watching but would rather be listening with all the post-production elements and the need to drive your car safely, then you can go to your favorite podcast provider like Apple, Google, Spotify, and do the free subscription thing so you can hear all these episodes. And when we're not doing these pop-ups, we post every week. We haven't missed a Friday since we started in the fall of 2017. Let's get to the Belmont Stakes now. They'll be racing for $2 million. And that will be, of course, for 3-year-olds. There are 8 of them in this race. And they will be going off at 7:04 Eastern time for what is the 13th race on the card. The weather forecast, and I hesitate to give this because they're horrible. They're horrible. But the National Weather Service says showers likely Saturday, mainly before 2 Eastern. Mostly cloudy with a high near 75, chance of precipitation 60%. Normally, when they say one thing, you go the other. But let's go ahead and look at this field that will be going the 2 turns in the 1.25 miles at Saratoga. It's the same course that they've used forever for the Travers. They're just using it a couple months early here for the Belmont Stakes. Let's start with the number 1 horse in this field, and that is Hill Road. He is a closer who is a new shooter to the Triple Crown Series. Chad Brown trains this quality road colt who finished first in the Peter Pan, the grade 3 race that went 1 1/8 miles at Aqueduct, normally the local prep for the Belmont Stakes. Hasn't been a big bellwether until recently, and now we've seen a couple of winners come out of that race into and then cashing in the Belmont Stakes. So coming off of that, this is a 5-time racehorse with a couple of victories, including a debut race in Ireland. He came over to Chad Brown in the spring, actually late winter, early spring this year, finished 3rd in the Tampa Bay Derby before the Peter Pan. We're talking about Irad Ortiz riding for the first time. He's the 5th jock in 5 different races now for this quality road colt. He is 10-1 on the morning line. Ed, you go first.
All right. I would have been a lot more excited about this horse, maybe in a big field where the price would be inflated. Thankfully, we have 8 instead of 6. 10-1 just does not tickle my fancy. The number power to me isn't there. I thought the Peter Pan was okay and was eager to see sort of what it came back. And it ended up not really being competitive with the grade 1 runs that we've seen from others in this field that we'll talk about. All that said, I mean, there's a chance, that, a couple don't fire their best shot. I mean, journalism's running his 3rd race in 5 weeks. Question marks about the pace, so maybe Rodríguez doesn't hang around. Shades of Gosger and the fact that, maybe this is the one that gets ignored that has some ability to hit the board. So I'm going to keep an open mind underneath, but definitely would be a surprise on top. And at 10-1, I see him as a big underlay.
Best Briz figure or best Briz speed rating of 101. That was when he finished 3rd in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile last year. The buyer speed ratings or figures, if you will, came with a best of 94 in the Peter Pan. Mark?
Yeah, he's an interesting horse. Like I kind of agree with what Ed said. 10 to 1's not super exciting, but while this is going to be a really great race to watch, it's a little bit challenging to bet. I'm actually going to focus my bets around Hill Road. And here's the reason why. It's kind of hard to separate the top three. I think you can make cases for all of them. But with Hill Road, to me, he's a better closer than Heart of Honor and Uncaged. And I think he's a better horse than Crudeau. So I don't see him finishing worse than fifth. I don't see him beating Sovereignty, Journalism, and Baeza on the square. So maybe one of them stumbles. So I don't see him finishing first or second. So by process of elimination, he's going to run third, fourth, or fifth. I'll go ahead and say he's probably going to run fourth. Rodríguez would have to hit the super pretty much for him to run fifth. I don't know that that's going to happen. I'm gonna say more than likely Rodríguez doesn't run that great, or one of the top three stumble a little bit. He runs fourth, single him in fourth in the superfecta. So you can basically go 3 horses to win, 3 horses for second. Yeah, throw Rodríguez in for third. So you've got 4 and third. Single him in fourth in the super. And then if you want, you can flip him in third for a couple bucks too. So I'm going to focus my wagering around him just because I think that's how the race sets out.
I don't hate that strategy. I'm trying to figure out, who other than the big three, and this has got to be a candidate, particularly now we have a little more speed in the race with Crudeau having been entered. Johnny, what do you think?
Well, you mentioned one of his races in Ireland. They tried him twice over there, and then Chad Brown says he's a dirt horse. And what gave Chad the idea? I looked at his breed, and I guess he was right. I mean, why would I ever question Chad Brown? But that BC juvenile last November in Del Mar, that was a huge effort. But he hasn't run back to that number, even though he does have that win in the Peter Pan. He's a really nice horse. The running style he has is very similar to the top guns, just a little slower. So he needs to be aggressive on the first run. And I wouldn't discard that he can do that. So I certainly see him being used in the top three.
Hey, he's certainly top 4. I mean, what Mark said, period. I don't know about top 3, but if you figure somebody might poke a hole among the top 3, this seems to be the candidate. So I guess we're all kind of leaning Hill Road, certainly on the periphery of tickets, if not fully on. Let's get to number 2, and he is one of the 2 classic winners in this race, and that would be the Kentucky Derby winner, Sovereignty, trained by Bill Mott, who 3 days after the Derby said, we're not going to the Preakness, and that there went my travel plans to go to New York this weekend, right? So in that sense, it's no Triple Crown. There's been a lot of backlash about that in the mainstream media, and certainly a fair amount among the racing glitterati. It's Junior Alvarado who will ride again after he got the victory, going from 4th midway through the race to 1st in winning the Kentucky Derby. It is an Into Mischief colt, bred and owned by Godolphin, which also shuns the Preakness. Only been once, Godolphin has. So here he comes back with 5 weeks off since that Derby win, which earned him a 103 Briz and a 105 Bayer. 2-1 on the morning line. However, at Caesars in Nevada, he was the 8-5 favorite in futures betting. So right there, I mean, it does beg the question, who may be favored, and does that really matter here? Johnny, what do you say about Sovereignty?
Well, first of all, I didn't like Trainer Mott's decision not to run him in a Preakness, and that's very selfish of me. But I totally understand it because that was the correct move. This guy's a horseman. He's one of the top trainers of all time. And so what he did to bring him around to this race was certainly the right move. His workouts at Saratoga have been calculated and steady. He's had plenty of rest. He should be fit and ready for the day. I wouldn't expect anything but the best from this horse. But the one thing I won't expect is to get 8-1 on the tote board. So he is as live as you could be.
Ed?
Yeah, I'm actually, I think one of the few, I guess, people actually taking bets thinking he's the favorite backs me up a little bit. I think he's going to be favored. And, the social media chatter is that journalism is a no-brainer and they can't believe that I would think Sovereignty is going to be favored, but I think he is. And if not, it's going to be razor thin. The 5 weeks I see as a positive. When it comes to my fair odds, I do have him as the most likely winner. Unfortunately, is both Mark and I have alluded to, and it's going to be a common refrain as we go down the list here. I'm not sure that there's going to be value. I think one's going to be 8-5, one's going to be 9-5, and both are below my fair odds. So to me, and I'll get more into the wagering strategy when I get to the horse I'm going to key on, but to me, there has to sort of be a second level of what you want to happen in this race. Mark talked about it with Hill Road. XYZ can be ahead of him, but Hill Road needs to be fourth. Sovereignty is not one I'm by any means going to throw out completely, but there are going to have to be some scenarios where other favorites don't run well for me to cash if Sovereignty does. But I do see him as the most likely winner. I like the 5 weeks versus journalism running his third race in 5 weeks. I do think that makes a slight difference, and that could be good enough to win in two very evenly matched colts that are hopefully going to throw down turning for home. I can't wait to see the race. Slight edge on most likely winner to Sovereignty. I don't think he's going to be worth the bet, though.
Mark?
Yeah, I agree with most of that sentiment. I totally agree that he could be favored, and if not, they're going to be really tight, and there's not going to be a lot of value there. It's gonna be fun to watch Sovereignty, see what he can do after the big Derby run in the slop. Obviously, has the advantage of the 5 weeks off and rested for this. I do think there's some worry though that there isn't really that much pace in here. You've got Rodríguez and Crudeau, and that's it. So are Mike Smith and Johnny V gonna really go out and wing it? Maybe certainly possible. But if the race isn't that fast, that's gonna work against Sovereignty, I think, more than journalism and Baeza. So I'm having a tough time splitting those three. As Ed said, there's not a lot of value there, so that's why I was looking elsewhere. I don't know. I don't really, yeah, I don't like coming from, essentially last or way back at a mile and a quarter at Saratoga on a pace that's moderate. So from that standpoint, I just can't get super excited about him and looking elsewhere from a wagering standpoint.
Ron,
Yeah, go ahead, Ed.
while Mark was talking, I looked up HRN for those that don't know. Does some line work that we have available for all tracks, but ours is published by Santa Anita, Louisiana Downs and Colonial. So I looked at what we came up with for the Belmont just for a eighth opinion on it. And two of the models I trust most are inconclusive. One has Sovereignty is the favorite, 3-2 versus 8-5. And the other has Journalism as the favorite, 9-5 versus 2-1. So yeah, to me, it's going to be super close.
For me, I mean, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. It boils down to whether Sovereignty will have enough pace in front of him. I do think that those two horses, and with Crudeau coming in, that does make a difference to me. And so I'm going to give a slight edge to Sovereignty over Journalism in this case. But I also don't necessarily think that it's an advantage in this case that he's been off 5 weeks, because Journalism, he looks like the kind of horse who enjoys running and racing. So, but we'll get to that when we get to Journalism. So I'm at least at this point, while I'm still learning from you three, I'm leaning Sovereignty at least to finish first against Journalism. Finishing first in the race might be another matter. We'll get to that. We'll get to Rodríguez now for Bob Baffert. He's by Authentic, the 2020 Horse of the Year, and until this past week was the last Kentucky Derby winner to have won a race afterward, while he actually was known to be the Kentucky Derby winner, until Mystic Dan won the blame. Mike Smith will be riding. He was supposed to go in the Kentucky Derby and was supposed to go in the Preakness. Foot problems, quarter crack, conspired against him. And so the Wood Memorial winner will be coming back for the first time then since April 5th to race here in this one. Owned by the SF Racing Group and a million partners, and is 6-1 on the morning line coming back after this long break. So 5 weeks is an advantage. What kind of a break is 2 months? I ask you, Mark.
It's not a good one. I ideally don't want that break. I think he's sort of to me the most intriguing horse in the race, kind of like the wild card. You've got Mike Smith on him. Mike Smith's been known to send in a big race like this. And then just looking at his workouts, because of the skip in the Derby, there's a 14-day break between works. He works May 11th, and there's a 12-day break. Then it's like, okay, we're a little bit behind, so let's gun him 7 furlongs. Has a pretty good work. For me, there's some mixed signals there. The other thing I wanted to point out on the sire stats, so authentic, he's fine, dirt route. He wins 12%, but not killing it. 8 furlongs to 9 furlongs, 11%, so going down. According to our stats, this is Authentic's first starter going 9 furlongs or longer, so there's just nothing there. I mean, certainly capable, but not inspiring. Is there some scenario where he gets out and Crudeau doesn't, and he holds on a long time and maybe runs second? I mean, maybe. I guess to me the most likely thing is, if he gets out there and thinks everything goes his way, I still would put him at about third at best.
Let's go to you, Johnny.
Well, he appeared to be the speed of the race, until Crudeau came along. And so I don't know what's going to happen there because the Crudeau's not being ridden by some second-rate jockey that doesn't know what he's doing. He's being ridden by one of the top guys who knows how to get to the front and ride a horse, which would be, many, many horses in his career to win many, many major races, including 3 derbies or so. Rodríguez doesn't need to be on top, but that is when he runs the best. As far as his workouts are concerned, he's working out just fine in Southern California. I think that foot bruise is history. So as far as being in good shape, I believe he is. Smith hopped on him for the first time in the wood and bingo, there's an easy winner. So if he's the controlling speed in the race, if Crudeau's not in this race, Rodríguez is my pick to win this race. But it's not going to be easy now. I mean, that's where Crudeau needs to be too. So can Rodríguez hold off Crudeau? Yeah, but he's going to have to work much harder than I thought he initially was going to have to work. So I'm not as ambitious on him as I was.
Ed?
Yeah, I think Johnny nailed it. I definitely was intrigued, and he was going to be 4th choice with Crudeau in here or not. He's still 4th choice, but his trip got tougher, and I don't really think we're getting a premium with the added horses. I actually thought there was a chance he'd offer more value in the 6-horse race for the reasons Johnny laid out. And when you fold in the workout, or excuse me, the time off, I think that's an issue too. So not a huge one. Again, I would have picked him, but I do see it as a little something where I'm not willing to take 6-1 anymore when you compound it all together. As Mark noted, though, he can hang on. If you're playing this race to beat one of the top 2, he's logically one of the ones you would use as an alternative, but the win value is no longer there.
101 best Bayer, 105 best Brisnet speed rating. I was coming into this week thinking, you got to bet Baffert in a race like this, especially if you're getting big odds. And 6-1 to me would be big enough. I'm not so sure the horse matches those. So I'm hedging that attitude, at least for now. Let's get to the number 4 horse, and that is Uncaged. Todd Pletcher has 2 in this race. This is one of them. This is a mid-pack horse who finished 6th in the Peter Pan, having gone in with a couple of wins, one in a debut and one in an allowance race. The 6th place in the Peter Pan came despite the fact that this was a ground-saving horse. He just weakened at the end, lost by 10 lengths. Do you draw a line through this one? Okay, that's the question you ask. Luis Saez will ride for the first time. this Curlin colt out of a Pioneer of the Nile mare. 30-1 on the morning line, Ed.
Yeah, it's an easy pass for me. There's no race to suggest he's competitive with Hill Road, let alone the top three choices. So I'm not going to belabor the point too much. If you're looking for a bomb to pepper underneath, and we'll get to him later, I'd much rather play Heart of Honor. If racing could get its act together and actually offer some heads to head, I would be looking for Heart of Honor for the max against this horse. Uncaged is completely overmatched.
All right, Mark.
I love that the fact that Mike Rapoli's and all have entered this horse. I mean, you got to have 8 horses in a race like this. And did you know anytime you look at handle stats, the biggest jump is when you go from 7 to 8 horses. It just adds that many more combinations to everything. So it's great that he's in here. But as Ed said, I mean, he's a complete takeout reducer. Does not need to be used any way, shape, or form. And the best part, I think, is, he's a well-bred horse. Let's run a mile quarter, see how he does. I don't think he is going to embarrass himself from a standpoint of running up the track, but we don't need to bet on him in any way, shape.
Best buyer of 81 2 starts ago. Best Briz of 92 on his debut. Form cycle going the wrong way, Johnny.
Yeah, his Peter Pan was absolutely terrible after a couple of decent races at a mile and 6 furlongs. So I'm trying to find some favorable things about this guy, and I found a couple. Mark mentioned it. The breeding's solid. He likes to run on a wet surface. That's a plus. And the price is going to be outstanding. But is that enough to stick him in this spot? Rapoli just needed to have a horse in the Belmont. He just had to have it. So
Yeah,
I think what Rapoli looks at is that if he finishes 5th and he runs a half decent race, he picks up some money. Is that the lowest? Can 6 pick up a few bucks too, or is it only 5th?
I think it's 5, but I'll double check at some point here.
they pay down to last. Now, whether
that's right. No, that's correct. 30. Yeah, you get 30,000 for finishing last. That's right.
Yeah. I will say I'd love to know what the instructions are. I mean, if Pletcher, Rapoli, whoever tells Luis Saez, ride for 4th, whatever you do, try to be 4th. Okay, he could be 4th if that's the plan and the only reason they're in the race. But I'm going to assume that Mike would love a shot to win at a bazillion to 1. And for that reason, it's just harder to like.
Okay. Toss for you too, Johnny?
Yeah.
Okay. Same here. Probably not seeing this horse on too many tickets in this panel come Saturday. All right. We're going to get to the second half of the field coming up. We'll also have a little later on an undercard pick from each of our folks. But Johnny, it's your turn to go ahead and tell us what's going on with DK Horse.
Well, I've been mentioning this King of the Track to you guys where you got to opt in. You just make a $5 bet and you opt in. And so far, and you're in that pool, the first pool was $1 million, and Sovereignty would have returned you $291 if you put your $5 on him plus the mutual payoff. In the Preakness Journalist, $42 for plus the return of your $5. And so now for the Belmont, we're doing King of the Track again. $200,000 prize pools goes to split by the winners of all the winners who picked the correct winner of the race. And we're doing a Queen of the Track for the Acorn. So the DK Acorn, which is the day before. So 2 opportunities that you should not pass on this time around.
And what's the get-in bet, Johnny?
$5. It's the $5 goes into parimutuel. That's your
right.
You paid for your $5. This is free. Whatever you pick comes back. It's free money to go along with your parimutuel win.
It sounds pretty attractive, doesn't it? Why don't you find out more? Go to where you get your apps, whether it's the App Store or Google Play or whatever you use, and look for DK Horse. Load it on your phone. You'll find all sorts of good things that you'll want to use all the time. But then this other little enticement that Johnny has just told you about, why don't you have that in time for the DK Acorn on Friday, DK Horse Acorn, should I say, and also for the Belmont Stakes card on Saturday. Find it where you find your apps, and that's DK Horse from the folks at DraftKings. The hardcore handicappers are hard at it on the Belmont Stakes as we continue looking at the rest of the field for the pop quiz of the champion. So let's get to the horse who was the last name mentioned who was being considered for this. We had for the longest time 6 horses, then it was 7, and then Crudeau's name popped up. He's by Justify, $350,000 colt owned by Bobby Flay and James Ventura. Johnny Velasquez has ridden all 3 times this horse has run. Yes, lightly raced. 2 victories after a 6-furlong 4th place finish back in February. Won and broke its maiden at Keeneland on April 19th, and then won at Pimlico in the restricted Sir Barton Stakes on the undercard of the Preakness. That was 1 mile and 1/16. This, of course, 1 mile and a quarter. This is the other Todd Pletcher, or is he the primary Todd Pletcher? As we mentioned, John Velasquez will ride, and when you see E8 and the Kieran speed points, yeah, that certainly tells you that this is a horse who's going to be contending for pace consideration along with the likes of Rodríguez. He is 15-1 on the morning line, and so as we try to examine how Crudeau changes everything for this race, Johnny Avello, what do you think of his possibilities for winning or hitting the board?
Well, he won easily at Pimlico a few weeks ago and at Sir Barton, and he appears to need that lead. And that's a problem for him. And that's a problem for Rodríguez, as they might just dance too fast. And that's what we've been talking about here. I talked about Johnny V as, proven he knows how to maneuver in the big races. I like what I see from this horse so far. He's working well on the training track, but this is just such a huge ask of him in this field. So I certainly don't see him as the winner here, Ron. And I'm not sure if he's going to go out and he's going to have Rodríguez right there with him. Where can he possibly finish and, near the top here? So it doesn't look like a good scenario for him.
And here's another thing I would also hasten to add. If you look at this, his best buyer is 84, and that was in the win in the Sir Barton. His best Brisnet number is 93 in the Sir Barton. Ed, he may want the lead. Does he have the wherewithal to keep the lead?
Not for 1.25 miles. Not against this group anyway.
But even in the backstretch, how far can he keep it?
Yeah, like Johnny said, it's all dependent on what Rodríguez is doing as well. Yeah, I think if he were lone speed, we'd be talking about him probably having the lead till the far turn. But since he's not, yeah, the backstretch is probably the ceiling. I'd love to know what the plan was. Todd Pletcher does not go to Pimlico very often. More than Bill Mott, admittedly, but he shows up in the Sir Barton. It didn't seem like the Belmont was the plan right after that. And he didn't have a lot of buzz against the hopeful world beater Invictus, who was bet to odds on that day and was no match for Crudeau whatsoever. So were they so impressed that, okay, yeah, let's look at the Belmont? Was it an owner issue? Naira hustle both of these Todd Pletcher trainees in? I don't know. But knowing would go a little bit of a way in maybe using this horse underneath. As is, I just don't like the path through Pimlico in a restricted stake. That just did not seem like Todd's MO with the horses he likes best. And he's willing to run multiple horses in the same race. So, it's not like the Peter Pan couldn't have been an option. I'm on the fade side of things. I was actually surprised to see 15-1 on the morning line, though. That's starting to drift to where I would say, okay, you got to do something with them. That's actually not an unfair price. I just think he's going to be lower than that. So I'm managing my expectations. But if he's higher than 15-1, I'd take a second look.
Mark, I threw some cold water on Crudeau. Let me throw a little bit of warm. If it weren't for the fact he had such a horrible start in his debut, he might be undefeated coming in here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting. He's a nice horse, but against this group, I kind of feel like, Ed, what's the poker term when you're drawing dead?
That's the poker term.
Yeah. Rodríguez he'd be a little faster than Rodríguez, maybe. But then, like, we talked about it. Johnny was talking about Rodríguez being extended. Crudeau would be extended that much more. Even if Rodríguez were like totally not to break and this horse got to the lead on his own, he's facing three of the best colts of this crop. And I can't see him, doing much against those top three. So he's not used for me. I think the most likely thing is that Mike Smith and Johnny V both break, get these Colts out. They look over, they see what they've got to deal with, and if they can wrestle the lead, they want to break out top. If the other one doesn't break well, they can take advantage, grab the lead, hold on a moderate pace as long as they can. I think that's the best scenario, but for me, that still puts him probably fourth at best. So I can't really jump on Crudeau here.
The Caesars futures, he was generating some steam. Actually, his odds did come down. Nothing extraordinary to make him single digits, not even close to that. But there was certainly more action on him in the brief amount of time that those futures were open before the draw. So, for whatever that's worth, that's what we're saying about Crudeau. And I'm also saying out.
HRN has between 10 and 12 to 1.
So there you go. There you go. See, it seems to be fitting, and I don't see him beating that.
Off odds, what about fair odds aren't up yet, right?
They're not up yet, no.
Well, by the time this is heard, you never know. You never know.
My fair odds are up, but not HRNs.
Oh, okay, all right. To buy, yeah. There's a difference with the distinction there. That could be another podcast. Let's get to Baeza, who I think by most reckoning is a wise guy horse coming into this one, having finished third in the Kentucky Derby, losing by only a length and a half behind Sovereignty and Journalism. This is also a horse who has he's faced a few foes during the course of his time racing for John Sheriffs and for the CRK Stable Group and the Grandview Equine. You have the third in the Derby. Before that was second in the Santa Anita Derby, and if it weren't for some attrition, it took a little scrambling to get him into the Derby. So he was a bit of an 11th hour addition, although Sheriffs did bring him to Kentucky pretty early. So he was prepared to go on in. He was at double-digit odds for that runner-up finish in the Santa Anita Derby, 13 to 1 in the Kentucky Derby. Flavien Prat will keep the ride for the second race in a row, and he is 4 to 1 on the morning line. Mark?
Yeah, it's another intriguing one. I think there's a lot of things to like, obviously, about Baeza, and ran well in the Derby, came on strong. He's had the rest, working well. My only knock on him really is going back to the sire stats is McKinsey's not really proving to be a distant sire. To give you an idea, so dirt route 12.8%, kind of similar to where Authentic was for Rodríguez. But when you start going to 8 furlongs to 9 furlongs, that drops to 8%. Probably some of that's because of the turf. I don't want to throw the horse out or anything like that because of that. I kind of come back to these top three are very similar, and you're going to get a little bit better price on Baeza than Sovereignty and Journalism. So I think you got to use that. And so I'm probably back to using all three on top and in second, and just hoping for Baeza. The other thing you can do from a odds leverage standpoint is you could take the top three and just require Baeza to hit one of the two spots. So basically saying if Sovereignty and Journalism go 1-2, well, I don't want that one. And so that is going to give you throw out a couple combinations, get you a little bit more leverage. I mean, there's a lot. If they don't go that fast, which is certainly a possibility with only two speed horses here, I think Baeza probably sits certainly much closer than Sovereignty. So he's going to have a pace advantage or a better scenario than Sovereignty, and maybe even sitting a little closer than Journalism. So there's a lot of positives, and the price is probably the biggest positive on this horse.
Ed, what about you?
Yeah, Mark, I guess stole my thunder a little bit with the wagering strategy, but I think Baeza is absolutely the one you want to key on. I just cannot imagine the Journalism Sovereignty exacta. Even if you kind of think, oh, no one's going to want to box the two chalks, it's going to be underlaid. It just has to be. So that to me means, okay, if that's underlaid among the 56 exacta combinations, is there a chance that getting Baeza in there offers some value? And I think yes. So he's lightly raced. This will be a 6th career start. I like the 5 weeks rest in that regard. He's already carried 126 despite being lightly raced, which he did in the Derby. You can't say the same for some of the other colts who have not attempted this class level yet. So I think that's a positive for Baeza that he's had that experience. Post 19 was no picnic. Overall, yeah, it was a clean trip. And he ran his race. And other than his debut, he's been sharp every time. There's nothing to, say that he doesn't belong with these. And other than, Rodríguez beating him 4 starts back when he went gate to wire, he's going to have company this time with Crudeau. So to me, it sets up better for Baeza. John Sheriff's, I just read, turned 80 in the past week. I had no idea he was that old.
I'll have what he's having.
To me, this would be a tremendous way to celebrate octogenarian status. I think he's the primary danger to the top 2, and I'm going to expect to be playing the race where Baeza can be first or second to one of the other 2. And if there's a situation with the odds where, let's say, journalism is taking more money, I'll lean on Sovereignty. And if it happens to be Sovereignty's the one taking more money, I'll lean on journalism. But Baeza has to be the one in the exacta for me.
And Ed, what price do you think we're going to get on him?
I thought 4 was a little low. I think he's going to be 5-1.
Okay. As far as other numbers, Santa Anita Derby, a 107 Briz was the best for Baeza, was 102 in the Derby. The DRF says with the buyers going the other direction, a pair of 3-digit buyers, 101 in the Santa Anita Derby, 103 in the Kentucky Derby. Johnny?
I like this horse a lot, but not necessarily for the win spot in this particular situation, although it's still very conceivable that that could happen. He's been beaten by 3 of the 4 horses in this race, and although he's certainly improving, so are they. So one thing you're not going to see, 14 or 15-1, you saw 3 of the last 4 races that he's been in. That larger value is now gone. But nevertheless, he is certainly a contender here. You can't ignore not using him in one of the top spots.
Okay. $1.2 million Colt by McKenzie. I look at the fact that he was gaining ground in each of his or 2 of his last 3 races. And he was game in the Santa Anita Derby. So I look at that and I'm thinking like, okay, I hear what you're saying, Mark, about can McKenzie get this distance? I'm going to say yes, and he's my key horse. He's my key horse. I'm going to go with him to win this thing. And the other thing I'm looking at is a little bit of history that has nothing to do with these horses because they're not history majors. But we've had 21 different winners of the last 21 classic races in the U.S. You have to go back to Justify in his Triple Crown year to find the last 2-time winner. I'm counting on it being 22. I'm counting on that. Again, though, I know there's no history majors among these horses. So that's my thought. All right, let's get to the horse who is the morning line favorite, if he isn't necessarily the post-time favorite, but he'll be one of the top 2, certainly. And that is the Preakness winner, Journalism, who plowed his way to victory through that tie-up in terms of traffic at the 3/16 pole at Pimlico. Umberto Rispoli, like him or not, he did get that win. Whether you think he should have been slapped on the wrist or more, then that's another podcast. In fact, we've had those podcasts. So he's coming in with wins in 5 of his last 6. The exception was the 2nd place finish to Sovereignty in the Kentucky Derby, and that's the beauty of this rematch. By Curlin, out of an Uncle Mo mare, it will be Umberto from Michael McCarthy, who, of course, is a 2-time Preakness winner, trying to get his first in the Belmont Stakes. 8-5 on the morning line. He was 9-5 in the futures at Caesars in Nevada. And with that, we'll start with you, Ed, to give us a little lesson in journalism.
I think the big question is whether you think he is the best horse. And it was the slop that helped Sovereignty, better trip, pace dynamics that really won't be present here at Saratoga. If the answer to that is yes, then you have to be licking your chops to get 8 to 5. There's definitely a scenario. I think if you're a fan of this horse, you're excited to bet him at this price. If you thought he was the best going into the Derby, you're disappointed he didn't win, but he came back in the Preakness. We all know about the trip and what happened there and what he overcame. And now he's at the Belmont at better than odds on. Whereas, of course, if he had actually won the Derby and showed up here after that Preakness, probably be 3 to 5, Sovereignty or not. So if you're a fan, you're excited. Unfortunately, I actually do think that the Derby, I don't want to say an indictment on this horse, but I do think that was a fair arbiter of their talent. Not that Sovereignty is better, but that they're a lot closer than certainly I thought going into the Derby as someone who backed journalism bullishly. So the fact that they're going to be close in price, I agree with, because I think they're close in talent. Unfortunately, both those prices are going to be under the fair odds line for me to have a punt on either of them, which is why I'm leaning on Baeza as our Ron is the key. But I'm not here to talk anyone off journalism. If you thought he was the best going into the Derby and use an excuse like the slop or the trip, by all means, stick with them because 8 to 5 is a fair price on that opinion. I just don't agree with that opinion, and that's why I'm not as bullish on him here. But he's certainly, along with Sovereignty and maybe Baeza, the best of this crop.
Johnny, you're there in Las Vegas. It's a place that loves rematches. They love carding rematches. I would suggest to you, rematches are never as good as the originals. Sequels are never as good as the originals. Godfather Part 2, exceptionally. But if you're looking at this, I would say we had the race of the year already. I might say that. Well, I'll tell you after the Belmont. I'll red board this thing to death. But how do you see this rematch and how do you see journalism?
You're right about rematches. They never turn out the way you anticipate. This is a truly remarkable racehorse with 5 wins and 7 starts, and a second and a third. And we all remember the second, but the third was the maiden special weight at Santa Anita last October. And if you go back and look at that race, he hugs the rail for most of the race, and then he makes that patented move to finish third. First race, that's understandable. He likes that rail. And he rarely ever races on the outside of any of his races, which it's not a major concern. It's just an awareness. But I'm thinking that this jockey should be moving to the outside at the appropriate time, which he just never does. Trainer McCarthy said, this is what he said. I watched the draw. He said he will be forwardly placed.
He did say that.
So that means he's going to be up there, but that doesn't keep Rapoli from getting him in trouble. Will he be tough? Will he be tough here? He'll be tough here, yes, but there's a lot of factors to look at. That last race, that last 16th of a mile he ran, that had to take a little bit out of him. That was really, really difficult. But he is a great horse. I expect him to be tough here. I'm not so sure. I'll use the same words that Ed used. I'm not as bullish on him as I was.
Best Briz 108 in the Santa Anita Derby in that win. Best then went 102, 107 in his last two. According to the buyers, 108 in the San Felipe, 102 Santa Anita Derby, 103 Kentucky Derby, 98 in the Preakness. Mark, form cycle question?
No, not really for me, not in the numbers I'm looking at. But we talked about the Preakness. That was awesome, that finish, right? When Gosker looked like he might get there with about a 16th of a mile to go, and what an awesome finish. Yeah, I mean, as Johnny alluded to, Rispoli, I mean, like him or not, I think he's a liability to a degree. I mean, he got in trouble in the 5-horse Santa Anita Derby, which really only includes 4 other horses he's racing against. If it doesn't happen, that he encounters trouble, and all things being equal, I think he's probably the better horse. And when you look at that record, 5 for 7. And if you look at the Derby, It's still kind of hard to tell from the sloppy race and the fast pace, but journalism did encounter trouble a couple of times, and the pace probably helped Sovereignty more than it helped journalism. So I think gun to your head, like he's the better horse for me slightly, but the odds are going to be pretty much the same. And then Sovereignty's got the benefit of the 5-week layoff, so it's just really tough to split these. I'm excited to see what he can do. I do think also though. You see a horse that's 5 for 7. If he wins, let's just say he goes and wins by 2, and then he's like 6 for 8, and we're all like, oh, of course, he was the one that beat the others.
Right.
He doesn't have to, but sitting closer is probably an advantage unless there's that hellbent pace duel. Again, like I said, at 1.25 at Saratoga, I don't really like horses coming from. I don't know, 8 or 10 back. I don't know how far Sovereignty will be. So I like them, but that's as a fan, I don't know how much there is to make betting wise. So
And I'm surprised this hasn't been brought up more. The Derby winner in the Belmont, without having won the Preakness, it's a pretty garish record.
But that's the 1.5 Belmont, though.
That's
I don't
true.
even consider this race the same.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
But
saying the Derby winner.
I will say from a class perspective, it makes you like Monarchos was absolutely no match for point given. Obviously, Giacomo was not better than a Fleet Alex. And those are small sample sizes, but you're right. 1.5 is a test, and this is a quiz.
Yeah, this is like the Travers NIT to me.
And just going back on the history for a second too, a lot of times the horses that have run well through the Triple Crown, like Justify or whatever, they didn't really face much in the Belmont. There wasn't a Sovereignty waiting for him. So
great point.
That's kind of the challenge here. So
yeah. I mean, this isn't affirmed Alidar, right? So I mean,
yeah,
it's certainly not that. This is certainly not that, and it isn't. Those extra 2 furlongs. That's another matter too. But listen, I'm not going to throw journalism out, but of everything we've talked about here, and as I said, I wanted to educate myself hearing you guys. I'm not so keen on journalism now, but I'm not going to throw him out also because look, he does have as Mark said, he could end up with a gaudy record and it would be shame on us. So it might be a little more of a defensive play on my part, but that's how I'm looking at it. By the way, we've been mentioning pace, and I did forget to say one very important thing about pace. Past performances heard on the Ron Flatter Racing Pod are provided by Brisnet, the only place where you can get Kieran speed points. I think I mentioned those earlier. They are the easy way to map the pace in any race. You can get your PPs for the entire Belmont week right now at brisnet.com. All right, now we get to number 8, Heart of Honor, the Honor AP colt who was bred in Great Britain. He's trained by Great Britain's own Jamie Osborne. He is based, as I pointed out, somebody gave me a hard time about saying he is Eurasia-based. Well, he spent the winter in Dubai, and he'll spend the summer in England. He spent his spring in America, having finished 5th in the Preakness. He is a maiden and allowance winner by our reckoning, and that was those 2 races were in Meydan during the winter that he won. By Honor AP out of a Scat Daddy mare. Safi Osborne rides for her father, the trainer, Jamie Osborne, 30-1 on the morning line. Nice story, as we said, at Preakness time. 5th in the Preakness might have been a little bit eye-opening, but what say you, Mark, about Heart of Honor?
Yeah, I just thought it was just kind of disappointing in the Preakness that couldn't do more with that pace, and a really distant 5th. I just have a hard time seeing anything change here, and so that kind of goes to my Hill Road theory. Normally, I'd love to take a crack at a 30-1 closer like this, but I just have a hard time seeing it.
All right, simple and sweet. And what about you, Ed?
I like a little more than market sounds like. I'm probably being charmed by the 30-1 line, and this horse was only 19-1 in the Preakness. That was clearly an underlay. I'm curious if we know Rapoli's willing to back his horses at the window, and it's tough to make a market in a race that's going to handle this much money. But if Heart of Honor is truly the longest shot on the board in this race, I think that there's actually an opportunity to gamble and hope to get lucky with this horse being third or fourth. And I would say that scenario does allow you to chalk out. You could be a little creative with journalism and sovereignty if you allow Heart of Honor to sneak in there. And look, based on the Preakness, they're going to make their run, and we'll see what happens. I do wish the breeding was a little more forward for this distance. I'd really be excited about keying underneath, but I do think is the longest shot of 8, that alone makes it worth some minor allocation of capital. That if it chalks out, Heart of Honor can be the one to maybe allow you to make some hay on the race. So has a chance to outrun the odds underneath, but would be a legitimate total shot to wear the carnations.
Heart of Honor finished second to Admire Daytona in the UAE Derby, did not come to the Derby, and Admire Daytona did, and finished last. Johnny?
I thought it was a good effort to finish fifth in the Preakness after a slow start, but now he's up against even bigger heavyweights. And so I don't know how this horse enters into the mix unless everything falls apart. And that could happen, but that's just a very tough way to handicap a race. So he was 6 for 6 in the money before the last, and like I said, the last wasn't bad. I personally, I just don't have the confidence in the horse. When I watched that race, with the Daytona horse, I wasn't that horse didn't make me jump off the chair either. So I just don't, I don't have the confidence here. That's all. And I certainly don't have the confidence in the rider.
Well, and be that as it may, I mean, I look at the UAE Derby. It was not exactly the most scintillating rendition of that race, and I didn't have a lot of faith in either horse coming out of it. And I at least got that part of it right. And so this is a toss for me. All right, let's find out what we're going to hear from our panel in terms of their best picks for the Belmont Stakes. But before we do that, Mark Midland, what do you have to tell us about the tools at picks.horseracing.nation.com?
Oh, there's so many great tools and so many great things on Horse Racing Nation, including great stories from all the journalists. Just wanted to mention you've got a new piece of hardware there, Ron, from the Preakness, your writing award, and it's about time somebody recognized all your talents and hard work. And no,
yeah,
but
hey, listen, I'm lucky to have that happen at home. If you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that
Take
goes
your
well.
wife, please.
But no, it was great that there's not that many awards every year for writers, so it was really great to see you recognized. And I just wanted to say there's so many great stories on Horse Racing Nation every day from yourself. Ed's writing fair odds columns all the time, Carolyn Greer, Candace Curtis, and the rest of the team. So can always go to Horse Racing Nation for great articles, stories, updates on all the horses and contenders. One of the things I wanted to mention that's free on the site, in addition to a free PP section, is there's a track trends tool, and that's a great way to see how the track's playing at any track in the country, and you can set it for turf, dirt, sprints, routes, and you can see how the track's playing for front runners, closers, inside out, and understand track bias. It's totally free at horseracing.nation.com, and just look under the navigation for betting. And there it is. It's the free track trends tool on Horse Racing Nation.
Look for it. HorseRacingNation.com. If you want the tools, picks.horseracing.nation.com. If you want the stories, just go to that homepage. It's all right there from the folks at Horse Racing Nation. Let's get a quick snapshot in the few minutes we have remaining. Let's get a quick snapshot about the undercard on Belmont Stakes Day from the hardcore handicappers. I don't even know what they're going to say. I've asked them all to give us a quick pick on what they look at on the other races Saturday. Ed, let's start with you.
Well, it's a handicap in the mile. A lot of people don't consider that. I do. I think weight matters, and I'm going to take the 6 to 7 pounds that Just a Touch is getting from Fierceness and White Barrio. 4 to 1 on the line. very clearly not going to be among the top two choices. Will vie for third choice with Raging Torrent. I think the sky's the limit for this colt. They've been patient to get back to stakes. He was only 11-1 in a full field derby, was 7-10, disappointed in the Iowa Derby. That was last year. As for this year, he's been impressive. And yes, this is a big step up in class. I really do think 6 to 7 pounds is not inconsequential when it comes to grade one animals. This is the chance that Just a Touch can beat them, not on the square because he's getting weight. I'm going to take a shot at 4-1.
All right, that's the Ed DeRosa pick, Just a Touch in the Met Mile. Johnny Avello from DK Horse.
My pick comes out of the Wonder again, mile and 16th on the turf. It's the sixth race on the card. A horse named Nitrogen. It took her a while to break her maiden. She was a maiden when she ran in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Filly race on the turf at a price of 49-1. She got third that day. It was a great race. But this year, it's been 4 straight wins for this talented grass filly, and I see it as 5, 6, 7, whatever.
Nitrogen to light the bomb for Johnny Avello. Mark Midland, what say you?
I was going to look to the 10th race on Saturday, the Pennine Ridge for 3-year-olds on the grass. And liked a couple of prices a little bit. The 3 States Rights for Cherie DeVoe at 6-1, but also going to give a shot to the 13 Colonies, 20-1, comes off a maiden win at Keeneland. And I think this race is kind of open for the taking, and it was an impressive winner that day. So I'm going to look to see what 13 Colonies can do back.
And I'm going to go to the Woody Stevens, which is just loaded. Blinkers on for Baffert with Madaket Road coming off the second in the Pat Day Mile, hoping that the blinkers might have him a little more focused, and we'll see if he can get out front and get this win and steal it at maybe 10-1. So that's how we're looking at the undercard on Belmont Stakes Saturday. Time now to get what our hardcore handicappers have as their best ticket, their best play for the Belmont Stakes. And so let's go around the round table one more time, and we will start this out with Ed DeRosa.
Baeza the key. I really hate, sort of punning, waiting on the tote board, but, whether journalism or sovereignty, if either one happens to have separation as the second choice, I would lean on that one with Baeza. As it is, let's just hope that we get the price I want on Baeza. And I think he's sort of the cagey single in these horizontal wagers. We didn't go through the undercard, but there's some very logical chalk in the preceding races. So even if you do think it's chalky, getting to Baeza as the third choice could give you some looks at some decent prices that otherwise you wouldn't have. So definitely looking at Baeza as the key, and then with who is just going to depend on how they bet it on Saturday.
Johnny Avello from DraftKings and DK Horse.
I'm looking at Sovereignty here. I'm probably going to bet if Sovereignty's 2-1 or more, I'm probably going to bet Sovereignty win and probably place. I figured a place pool might not be too bad. We'll see. We'll look at that when I'm there. Other horses I'm going to use underneath. I'm going to use Hill Road. I'm going to use Rodríguez, and I'm going to use Baeza. Now you notice I haven't mentioned journalism, who's been really good to me, but I just can't play a Sovereignty journalism exacta. It's just too short, and it's just not worth it to me. So I'm probably going to reverse some of that too, just in case a horse like Rodríguez gets loose on the lead. But I think Sovereignty is probably going to be the livest horse on the track for this race.
All right, the boss at Horse Racing Nation, Mark Midland.
All right. Like I said in the beginning, I'm going to focus on Hill Road for my main play. So I'm going to look at a superfecta 267 over 267 over 2367. So adding Rodríguez in third, singling Hill Road in fourth. It's 12 combinations. So play it for $4. That's $48. So you try to get a $4 super if he runs fourth. Flip it into third for $1. It's another $12, so that's a $60 bet. And that'll be my main play with Hill Road. I think Baeza is as live as the other two, so I think you've got a nice shot that if he gets in there at, like I'd say in 5-1, he gets even in second, certainly could win this race. If you're playing exactas, like I said, I would just play Baeza over Journalism and Sovereignty and then flip it under Journalism and Sovereignty.
I will key Baeza, but I will wheel him on top with Journalism and Sovereignty. And like you, Mark, I'm going to drop Hill Road in there in the 4 spot. If I start to get a little fidgety and have a little bit of a bankroll, I might squeeze him in there in the 3 spot on the superfectas as well. But that's my key is Baeza and my Bombers Hill Road. And good luck to everyone this weekend as we look forward to the end of this Triple Crown season. Will we get a repeat for the first time since 2018, or will we get the 22nd consecutive different winner? My thanks again to Johnny Avello, Ed DeRosa, and Mark Midland. Our regular episode of the podcast is Friday with Maggie Wolfendale Morley from Naira TV and Fox Sports, and with Paddock Prince handicapper David Levitch, plus Belmont Stakes connections. Until then, I'm Ron Flatter. I don't know what we are fighting for, but I know that they don't want us here.